I think we have enough people here to start our episode this evening. So, this evening I want to talk about identity. Now, that is a really, really big topic. It's very wide. You'll see in a few minutes, how I'm gonna narrow that down because we could be taking this in like a million different directions. And it's also one of those topics where you could go super, super deep. And obviously, with a half hour long episode, I can't get that deep. But what I've started doing, and you guys DM me and let me know if this is helpful. What I've started doing is when my Thursday newsletter goes out, which is tomorrow, obviously, I'm taking the topic that I did for the podcast the night before and I'm going into greater detail and giving or not more tips, but more information, just going into more detail, deeper dive, adding some links in there, maybe some reflection questions, things like that. If that's helpful to you as I continue to do this, let me know. If you hate it, let me know too. Because that's the only way I know what's going to work for you guys. I'm doing this you know, for you guys. I want this to be valuable for you. So if it's not working, just let me know. Okay. So as we get going, I want to ask a question, or actually ask you a question. Um, have you ever caught yourself saying or thinking, this is just who I am now? This is just my life. And it could be something like, I'm just a sick person, or I just can't move the way I used to, or I'm just somebody who's always going to struggle with anxiety, things like that. And on one hand, when I think about, and I'm going to raise my hand with that, like I've said all of those things for sure. Um, one of them in particular is my body does not move the way it used to, which it clearly doesn't after the massive surgery that I had. Um, so I want to start by saying that many times those types of thoughts absolutely make sense. They're born out of experience. They reflect our real symptoms, our real sensations in our bodies, our real challenges. These are not fake. It is absolutely real. It can even feel very grounding because it creates a container for the experience that we're having. So I want to start out by saying that when you have a thought like, I'm just a sick person, it makes sense to have that thought. Okay. But what if, here's my question tonight, what if without really like consciously realizing it, those statements do something more? Maybe they create something that you didn't intend to create. That's what I want to kind of talk about tonight. And I don't have all the definitive answers on this. Annalise and I were just talking about this before we went live, that what I do in these episodes, you guys, is I bring you information or things that I've learned through my illness and my diagnosis that have really helped me. If it doesn't resonate with you, you don't have to do it. You don't have to do anything. I never want you to substitute my judgment or anybody else's for your own. So you just take what I'm saying, listen to it. And if it resonates, that's great. If it helps you, awesome. If it doesn't, throw it out, you guys. Everybody's not gonna like every episode I do. So I just wanted to give a little caveat to that because what I'm talking about tonight can be a little triggery and it can be a little sensitive. So just want to lead with that. So when we have those of let's just go with I'm just a sick person. What if they're describing your experience and not just describing your experience, but what if they're kind of shaping your experience and your day-to-day reality? So today, like I said, I want to talk about identity, the way we see ourselves as individuals, as people, and how that can either gently support us or sometimes it can kind of limit us and box us in a little bit. We're going to talk about the distinctions between those two, when one might be happening or the other. So there's a really subtle but very powerful difference between saying, I'm a sick person and I'm a person who's experiencing illness right now, or I'm a person who's been diagnosed with an illness, or I'm a person who's going through treatment. There's a big difference between saying I am a sick person and I am experiencing X, Y, and Z. Um, One kind of closes a door or can close a door The other one can kind of gently keep it open a little bit and create a little bit of space. And it's that small shift that can change the way you think, the way you feel, the decisions that you make, the actions that you take, and then it can confirm the beliefs that you have about yourself. So it can be really powerful and it is worth looking at. So today we're going to just kind of gently explore that space. And we're not doing it to deny what's real. We're not doing it to be like toxically positive or any crap like that. You guys know if you've read anything that I've written over the last number of years or listened to any of my previous episodes, I am not into toxic positivity. I am not into denying reality. That never works. And it's never worked for me. I don't understand how it could work for anybody else. But what we're talking about is just creating a little bit more room inside of us in how we see ourselves and how we identify ourselves, just a little bit of space so that we can maybe see some things in a different way, because you are not and I am not what you're going through. I'm not what I'm going through. It's not quite the same thing. And the way you hold on to that truth can maybe be a little bit more important than what we might think. So as we get into this, I wanted to talk about the differences between identity and experience. So I said just a moment ago that if you say you're a sick person, or I'm a sick person, that's different than I'm a person experiencing sickness. And so identity, let's just look at definitions here. Identity is who you are, whereas experience is what you're going through. And they are two different things. They are connected for sure. Um, what you're going through can influence how you feel about yourself and feel about the world around you. That's just it's natural and it's going to happen. But when we confuse the two or fuse them together, then I think it creates a little less flexibility in the way that we think and the way we feel, the way we move through the experience, and the way we make decisions about it in our day-to-day lives. So that's kind of what I want to get interested in today. So um, why is how we think about ourselves so powerful? If you tuned in last week, we talked about anxiety and gentle ways to deal with that. And I talked about that fear loop with anxiety. With identity, there's another loop with that too. The reason why we loop things like that is because, and this is just a little bit of brain science here, we all have what's called a reptilian brain. It's that, um, I think it's the prefrontal cortex. Annalise, does that sound right to you? Does that sound right? I think we're going to go with that because that sounds fancy and sounds like sounds like I'm really smart. So, but I actually do think that's what it is. But anyway, it's informally called the reptilian brain. Your reptilian brain exists to keep you safe. It's a throwback from thousands, millions of years ago when we were, out there hunting our food for dinner and we had dinosaurs. We weren't around the same time as dinosaurs, but we had, prey that was following us, trying to kill.
Yeah.
So, so, um, so that part of your brain exists to keep you safe. It does not like open loops. It does not like unanswered questions. It does not like things that aren't labeled clearly or that leave question marks or uncertainties. It doesn't like that. So when it feels that, it's going to give you the message that you're in danger, that I'm in danger. And when that happens, that's when our thoughts kind of go loopy. So here's what happens in the brain and in your body and in your life when you get into this identity loop. So the first thing is there's a belief, whatever the belief is. And I'm going to give you an example in a minute. So it starts with the belief. That belief is going to create some thoughts, good or bad. It's going to create thoughts. Those thoughts are going to then influence what feelings you have. And those feelings can then influence and impact the decisions you make about your behavior or how you're interacting with other people, even how you take care of your own self. And that behavior then can reinforce that original belief. So it's a cycle that goes around like this. Now, if it's working for you, If that cycle's working for you, then it's going to kind of keep you gently moving forward, and it's going to feel like you're kind of in alignment with yourself, and it's going to feel good. If it's not working for you, it's going to create some problems. And now here's a good example. Let's say that your belief, your identity belief about yourself is I'm fragile. Could be emotionally fragile, could be physically fragile, whatever. So if you have that belief about yourself, your thoughts and feelings could be that you start to notice more things around you, more signs and symptoms that you are actually fragile. You could become very overly sensitized to what's going on in your body or in your conversations that indicate to you that yes, you are fragile. And those thoughts and feelings can then lead you to protect yourself too much, to isolate too much, to not take appropriate risks, to not want to get into in depth conversations. If you feel like it's just going to, not be good for you, then you just won't do that. And certainly there are times when we don't need to do things, but um, and then the loop can be, at the end of that, you could feel actually weaker and more felt before. So that can be a little bit of an issue. Uh,
Jenny, there's a really good comment that from Shauna in the chat saying this makes sense and familiarity makes us feel safer. But then
yeah,
as a child of trauma, it's hard to escape traumatic thoughts and behaviors. So really resonating with what you just described.
you, Shauna, for interrupting and letting me know that, because that's exactly right. Your reptilian brain wants you to feel safe, and sometimes the safety comes from what you know, even if it's not that healthy for you. It's sort of like, what I know is more comfortable for me than traipsing out here and trying something different, or trying on a new thought can feel really threatening. And that's actually um a section that I have towards the end of this episode that I am going to touch on that a little bit more. So thanks for bringing that up, Shauna. Um, so what I want to kind of segue into a section here about how sometimes these thoughts are actually helpful. And I don't want to ever say that, oh, you shouldn't say you're a sick person. You shouldn't say this about yourself. You shouldn't say that because that's just unhealthy. Well, that's very one dimensional, and good for you if you can, jump through those hoops and be okay with it. Because sometimes I can and sometimes I can't. And that is just the reality, right? So, how is it good sometimes? So, in my own experience, it was like right after I was diagnosed. um, I had a lot of feelings, I had a lot of fears, I had a lot of questions, and putting some labels on some things, on this diagnosis, on my health, on me, helped me to contain the fears that I was having. It helped to give it a name. It helped to give it some structure. It actually helped to create some community and some support. When I would say, "Hey, I'm really sick here. I'm not doing well, and I need some help." And it creates that kind of a community and structure that can actually be really, really helpful. That's often helpful when we're going through, like, when we're in survival mode. Something's hitting you really hard. Sometimes you need that container that says, "I'm really sick." And at least in the short term, that can really help you. So I never want to say that it's always bad to say I'm sick or I'm fragile or I'm anxious or whatever. It's not always bad. Sometimes you need it to have that container. So having that identity during those times isn't wrong. It's just protective. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It doesn't mean you're ignorant. It just means your body and your brain are trying to protect you. And that's a good thing. Sometimes we really need that. Now, sometimes, though, what protects us in one season of life kind of limits us in another season. That's why I say it's just really a good practice to get into, to not all the time. You can't always just be questioning everything. Sometimes you just need to settle into the feelings that you're having. But as a regular kind of occurrence in your life, kind of question things a little bit. That's an invitation that I have for you this week. Question where you're at with, what how am I thinking about my identity? How am I thinking, like, about my health? What words am I using to describe it? and to describe my experience of it. It's worth looking into on occasion to see, if there's some growth points that can happen. Um, okay, so your identity can shape your behavior because it can, like, let's say you're somebody that can't, you're like, I can't handle stress. We talked about this just a second ago, but if you say you can't handle stress, you're going to start avoiding all the things that might cause you stress. What can happen then is you have a lack of capacity. Your capacity is not expanding at all. You don't become any more resilient than what you are. And it can cause a lot of problems in your relationships. It could cause problems for you. It can really hold you back. So we want to look at things like that and just be aware. I would say just be aware. Um, it's not to place blame on yourself, like saying, "Oh, I shouldn't think like that. I shouldn't identify like that." Well, guess what? You do. So we're just going to accept where you're at right now, and that's you're doing it because it's serving a purpose in your life, and we always want to respect that. There's never a cause for saying, I'm such a loser for thinking this. That's another part of an unhealthy identity would be saying I'm such a loser for thinking that. We don't want to do that. We don't want to do that at all. So something I want to invite you to do is to maybe think about just expanding how you talk about your health or your identity. Um, since mostly what I talk about is chronic health issues, we're going to use that as an example. So, um, you could say something like, I'm somebody who's experiencing illness and I'm really resilient. And what that tells me is that I'm going to figure out some way of dealing with this by hook or by crook. It might not be great. I might have some missteps, but I'm going to figure it out in a way that makes sense to me. It might take me a while. You could say I'm struggling right now, but I'm relearning my body. That's one that's been really really important to me, you guys, because after I broke my back in two places, from, if you recall, it's because I had tumors in my spine that I did not know I had for 2 months, actually for longer than that. And my spine finally broke in 2 places, and I couldn't actually walk, without a walker for several months, and then I graduated to a cane, and during that whole time, I had this really huge, like, full torso, brace on, and I couldn't bend over to tie my shoes. I couldn't even put shoes on. I couldn't take a shower by myself. I had all these different aids to, like, pick things up off the floor. I needed a lot of help. And so what I started saying was, man, I'm really struggling, but I'm learning. I'm also relearning my body because this is a very different body I'm in than what I was in 3 years ago. And I'm still learning what that means to be in this body that doesn't move the same way, that doesn't feel the same way, doesn't respond the same way to regular types of activity. So it's okay. It's actually really healthy to say those things. I'm really struggling right now. I feel like shit right now. And yet I know that, like, I'm a resourceful person. I'm going to figure this out, or I'm learning new ways to deal with this. You can always give yourself those props to keep you going, and I like the word reframing because it does reframe it. Um it takes away from that feeling or that sensation that you can have that this is absolutely horrific, because I'm here to tell you, and I'm sure some of you listening right now have instances in your life, and you might be in one right now where you're like, this is absolutely horrific. I've been there. I've absolutely been there. My point is, I don't want to stay in that headspace that says this is absolutely horrific and this is crap and I'm not functioning at all. You are gonna have days like that. We just don't want you to have an entire life like that. So that's why we're talking about this kind of thing. So, um, the way that we see ourselves, can, I wanna say, can either, like, keep the body braced or it can allow it to soften a little bit. And that's kind of what I'm interested in, is not telling yourself something that's not true. Like, I've got issues with my back. My back often doesn't behave the way I want it to. Um, but the way I speak about my health, about this cancer diagnosis, about how my back is, about how my nerve damaged feet and legs work, the way I speak about it can create more problems for me, or it can create a little bit of softness and a little bit of space so that I can get curious about how I want to talk about this. Maybe a new and different way to talk about it that can be more helpful to me. Um, Now, I do want to say that if you are in a space right now where you're transitioning out of, say, survival mode, and now you're into like maintenance mode, treatment mode, things like that, that's where your language about what your experience is, that's where it can change a little bit, and that might be a natural opening for you um, uh, to kind of experiment with different words that resonate with you and that help to support you. So, um, it can feel when you're going through a time when you're changing how you speak of your identity and who you are as a person, it can seem a little scary. It can seem very uncertain. And again, it's because your brain is used to how things were before. It's used to how you handled things before, how you talked about things before. And when you really try to change something or introduce something new, your brain can often say, no, 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 that's not good. We don't like that. We don't like that. We like this better. That seems more comfortable to us. And what you might consider doing during times like that, if you feel that revolt inside you that's like, oh no, this is too scary, you can talk yourself through it by saying something like, it does feel scary. Just admit it. This really does feel scary. That I think I can do this, if I think about this a different way. I think I can figure out a way to handle this in a way that makes sense to me, in a way that's going to help me move forward and make me feel better. I know it feels scary right now, but I'm gonna hang with it for a while and see and just kinda see what happens. That's a good way to kind of reframe things so that you're not just, like, clamping down on the, "No, it's not scary." It just doesn't pay to say a feeling that you're having is not the feeling that you're having. It just doesn't, particularly when you're handling something that is really big and really scary. So just say it. This is really scary, and I'm trying something new, and I'm really proud of myself for trying something new. And sometimes the things that you're trying might not work very well, but that's okay. Just throw that out and try something else. Okay. Just know there's nothing wrong with you if you are thinking and trying something new in terms of how you're talking about the illness or your diagnosis or anything like that, or any other challenge that you're having in your life. You are not weak. This is not a condemnation of you or anything about you. Um, so I want to close by I'm gonna read a couple of statements, and I want you at home to just repeat it silently or out loud to yourself, whatever feels comfortable to you. And obviously, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. But I think this can be a powerful thing. I am not my diagnosis. I am not my hardest season in life. I am not the chapter in this book, and this book is not even completely written. There are chapters not even written. I'm a human being that's in a whole person that is having an experience. These the reframings are really, really important. It puts a bookend on something for you. It says, what you're going through is tough, but it's not insurmountable, even though it feels like it is. And some days it will feel insurmountable, and some days it will be insurmountable. I'm not going to lie about that. But when we can have these tools at the ready at our fingertips to say, you know what, there might be a different way to talk about this, to think about this, and to feel about this that might help me better. And that's what we get interested in. So, um, I really hope this was helpful to you. This has been one of those pivotal kinds of things for me, learning about who I am, like the person who I feel like I am. Oh, there's almost one thing I forgot. Um, another can do this, and this is a good homework thing for this week. If you want to have like sort of an actionable item to take away from tonight, is it's a fill in the blank. It's not a question, it's a fill in the blank kind of sentence. I am a person who fill in the blank. When you fill in that blank for you, that's going to give you some really good ideas about what your personal identity is. And your identity is often very subconscious. We don't often think about these things in a really conscious way, which is why we're doing it tonight. It's very automatic, very subconscious. And because of that, that's what pulls up those immediate, like knee jerk feelings and thoughts and behaviors and decisions. And so, what we want to do, that the whole point of tonight's episode is to slow that whole process down and pull those steps apart just a little bit to create that space so that you can think through it in a way that might help you better. So, I hope that was really helpful to you. It's been something been kind of foundational for me, and I knew that this was a topic that I wanted to have as like one of my very first episodes, because I it's something that I build on in different ways. Um, do we have any questions or comments that we need to um, uh,
We,
bring up right now?
we do have one question. It's a really nice one, also from Shauna. What is a tip to help motivate us in the morning to get up and move, even when we feel pain and sadness?
Oh,
It's a
I,
great question.
it is a good question. And to be honest, I'm kind of going through that right now, because I recently wrote on Substack that, you know, I often with my cancer treatment side effects often will have like a few days of feeling not great. And then it's followed by a couple of days of feeling okay. And then I'll have a day or two where I feel, hey, this is pretty good, right? Um, but for me right now, I'm in a phase where it's been more than a month of not feeling well. And I've actually had um, days like this past weekend where I felt really bad, and I don't wanna get up out of bed at all, and I don't wanna start my day because I don't know how I'm gonna feel, and so I use this word a lot. The word is curiosity, and it's something, um now I'm not an expert in the Stoics, but I've been getting into, I don't know if you guys follow Ryan Holiday on he's probably on social media everywhere, but he's for sure on Substack. And I'm pretty sure that he's got a podcast, but he has studied the Stoics and he talks about that a lot. And one of the things that one of the Stoics says is to be curious, to have a sense of curiosity in your life. And so, Shauna, sometimes what I do when I'm waking up and I'm not feeling it, I'm like, I just want to pull the covers over my head. I'm either feeling so physically bad, or I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling really sad about what my reality is right now. And so I start by reminding myself to get curious. And what that means is, I wonder what today is going to be. I wonder how my body's going to be today. I wonder how my body feels right now. And I start to kind of gently stretch and move things. And so you do things like a series of questions like that. I wonder if, I wonder how. And it kind of takes you out of that immediate like connection with how your body is feeling, and it puts you in an observer role a little bit. And that can help to kind of frame it to where it's something that's manageable, and not something that's so fearful. And then, to be honest, and another thing that I do is I will give myself a little bit of a pep talk. I'm like, okay, you can sleep in for 15 more minutes because I feel like you really need it, and then we're going to get up. We're just going to get up and we're going to see what happens. We're just going to see. It's like a big grand experiment, right? So those are two things that I do: have a sense of curiosity about what your body and your brain is doing right now, and then give yourself like a little bit of a boundary and a timeline, like I'm going to let myself feel like this for another 10, 15, 20 minutes, because it feels like something that I might need. And then I'm just going to literally get up. I'm going to make myself get up, and I'm not going to talk myself into sleeping in, anymore. Um, Anything else? Oh, Shauna says, thank you. You are quite welcome, Shauna. You are quite,
Yes, that was the only question in the chat. A couple comments from Paul. You're an absolute titan, Jenny. Curiosity is
oh,
great.
thank you.
Yeah.
Paul's
So if
Paul's
anybody
one if you're on Substack to follow. Paul does a lot of work with talking with, interviewing people that are going through a lot of health challenges as well as caregivers for people going through health challenges. So they're really good conversations for learning how to manage some of this shit. You guys, it's not easy. This is not easy. This is not easy.
No, it is not. Any last questions for Jenny before we wrap it up for the evening? Pop them in the chat. But otherwise, I think we're all about done up in this peanut gallery.
That's amazing. You guys, thank you so much. I never take for granted that you spend part of your Wednesday evenings with me. Um, and, I've said this before that sometimes the things that we talk about on this podcast um, are not the fun things to talk about. They're not the sexy things to talk about. Um, but in talking about them, we're pulling back that veil of of uh, of fear. And I can say that for myself. Sometimes if I don't talk about something and I just put a curtain over it, it's just kind of lurking in the background, and it creates more fear than the original reason to be afraid. And so my goal with this podcast is to kind of I don't ever want to like unceremoniously rip off a freaking band-aid and traumatize people. I don't want to be traumatized. I move through things quietly. If you know me in real life, I move through things kinda I feel like I'm thoughtful, and I want to always bring that sensibility to this podcast where, there are gentle ways to look at things. There are gentle ways to question things without, you know, recriminations and blaming and feeling bad. We all of us are already feeling bad about some things in our lives. We don't need more. You're not gonna tune into this if you're just gonna be feeling bad. So my goal is to always help maybe ask some questions that can help you think about things in a little bit of a different way. And if I've done that, then if that happens, then I've done my job here. So again, thank you so much for joining me this Wednesday evening on Jenny's Dying to Live. And we will see you next Wednesday. Same bat time, same bat place. Here live on Substack at 6:30 Central Time. So we'll see you next time. Thanks you guys for tuning in.